Good evening, everybody. My name is Mark. I'm an alcoholic. So what Blake was saying when he was introducing me, he was really trying to be kind by saying, I have a lot of time on my hands. I'm able to work with others. That means I'm old. So he was kind the way he said it. Some of you have heard me speak here before or in other places, so I'll try and change it up a little bit tonight. But the message will be the same, I hope, and I'm pretty sure it will be. So every time I come up to speak, I always feel a little bit different, and I'm not sure why that is. Sometimes I'm nervous, sometimes I'm not nervous at all. Other times I just come up here and speak from the heart, and that's what Blake said I should try and do tonight, and that's what I usually try and do, so that's what I'm going to do tonight. I was born and raised in New Jersey, so I sound a little different than some of you people, you homegrown North Carolina folks. But one thing I have found through the years is that alcoholism travels well. The disease is everywhere. I've seen the same results of alcoholism in North Carolina as I saw in New Jersey. I see the same results in South Carolina. I see the same results when I'm in Florida or New York. It doesn't matter where you are. This disease travels. I have a sponsor, Ken the Tall Man, who's 43 years sober. I try and sponsor a lot of men in the program. As Blake said, I find I have the time to do it, and I find it a blessing. And it's probably one of the most critical things in my sobriety is the ability to give back. I was always a taker throughout my life. I mean, I don't know if any of you can relate to that, but it was always about me. I was always self-centered. It was interesting as I was thinking today, when I was a child growing up, I grew up in an alcoholic family. When I was growing up, I always thought I was pretty good at things, and I was blessed with a good brain, but I always felt different. I always felt like I wasn't quite good enough. And, I never really thought about that when I was younger, but as I've gotten time to think about that, that's really who I was. I had a lot of fear. I used to hear people talking about fear in these rooms, and I'd say, what the heck are they talking about? I'm not afraid of anything. And later I found out, I had a lot of fears. And probably all throughout my life, as a young man, as a child, and even today. So, I started in Red Bank, New Jersey. I was born in East Orange, New Jersey. I started in Red Bank, New Jersey, and ended up going to good schools there. I was from a Catholic school upbringing, and I got a good education, but I was always able to get by. I was always one that would figure out a way. I didn't have to do my homework. I'd figure out a way to get someone else to do it for me or give me the answers or whatever. So at a young age, I was always looking for the easier, softer way. And, I think probably like a lot of us in here, started out drinking at a young age, and at first, it was fun. We drank all this good stuff like Boone's Farm, Hop and Gator. Some of you probably never even heard of Hop and Gator, but you never want to try it either, that's for sure. And back then, the drinking age was 21, but somehow we always figured a way to have booze. We always figured a way. Where I grew up, there was a local guy in town, and he was kind of like what they would call the town bum. And he would buy us beer if we gave him money to do so. And that's how it started out for me, I played sports in high school. I loved it because it got me away from my house. I didn't have to see my father drunk. Although when he would pick me up from practice, he'd come drunk. And I had a lot of anger about that. I lived angry for a long time as a young man. And that carried with me for quite a few years. I was angry at everything. And, that was probably the trigger of it. I didn't know it at the time. I remember saying to my brother, who's 2 years younger than me, he's not an alcoholic. He's from the same gene pool, but he doesn't drink much. I mean, occasionally he'll have a beer. Although when we were younger, we hit it pretty hard together. But he was able to stop. He had a family. He had 2 young boys, and he decided, I'll never be like my old man. And I remember him saying that. But anyway, we were similar in the sense that we were both a little crazy. We were both a little crazy, And I didn't listen to people well. Other than the only people I honestly listened to was my mom and my coaches. That was it. And I thank God that I had some good coaches when I was growing up. They kept me kind of on the straight and narrow. Because if I didn't have that, I would have been just off to the races. I would have been just gone. So, my mom raised 2 boys, and she worked full time. So, I played sports, and then in the summertime, I wanted to do what the other kids were doing. And what the other kids were doing was drinking and partying. And so I decided in my junior year of high school that I was going to move out from my mom's home for the summer. She wasn't too happy about it, but I was. I was thrilled because I could drink the way I wanted to drink. And the people that I lived with, the parents were very accommodating. As long as we stayed around the house and we weren't driving, they said, drink as much as you want. So, that was like an alcoholic's paradise. Drink as much as you want. And so I got really good at that. And then I, after the summer, I go back home. And, my mom's almost 93 years old, and to this day, she doesn't consider me an alcoholic. But she forgets all those years of torture that we put her through. And that's what moms do. That's what they do. They forgive, or they forget, or both. And it doesn't really matter. So anyway, I finished high school. I didn't have a lot of bad experiences with drinking. I mean, it was fairly tame. And, but when I went to college to play basketball. And, when I went there, it was like it was 24-hour visitation at every dorm. It was whatever you wanted to go on, went on. Nobody bothered you. And there was a lot of what you call dry goods today. There was every kind of dry good you wanted. And that's just the way it was. I was a product of the 60s and 70s. And it was everywhere. And on this campus, it was everywhere. And so I played basketball for the first year. Seemed to do okay, went home in the summer, drank like crazy, did other things too, and always had this feeling. I didn't know, I didn't want to be like my old man, but here I was at a young age. I was just like him. I drank for one reason. That reason was for effect. It was never for the taste, never, from day one. I didn't even like the taste of the stuff. But then I seemed to acquire a taste for it. I don't know how that happens. But it happened. And I may jump around a little bit here as I'm going through my story. That's because my brain doesn't operate the way that it used to. So I get confused sometimes. And that's okay. That's okay. But anyway, so I was in college, and, it was, I went to maybe, I don't know. I didn't go to a lot of classes, let's put it that way. And, I did a lot of drinking and other things, like I said. And I hung around with the people that drank just like me. I was going at it full tilt. And so by the time my junior year came in college, I just quit. I just quit basketball. I decided I stayed in school, technically. Technically, I was still in school, but I basically quit. And I decided that I would take a job, I don't know if any of you have ever done it, humping furniture, for $4.25 an hour. So I gave up a scholarship, left college to go lift furniture for a living. Not exactly the best move, but that's where alcohol had taken me in a short period of time. I used to live with guys. We used to have what was called the rec room in the dorm. I was in the jock dorm, and it used to have 4 guys living in one room. and we all drank the same way. But they would tell me, "You're an alcoholic." And I'd look at them, I go, "What are you talking about? I drink just like you guys." The difference was that they got up and went to class. The difference for me was I didn't go to class. And so, at a young age, people were recognizing it before I was, and I was in a lot of denial about what was going on. I think the problem for me, and if you're new here tonight, and if you haven't been sober too long, just try and identify with what I'm saying. Don't compare yourself to me, because I guarantee you our stories are probably a lot alike. If you're sitting in this room, you didn't get here from sucking on lemons. You got here from ingesting a lot of booze and alcohol and other substances, probably, because today that's the reality of the world we live in. So, anyway, now I'll never forget the guy that I worked for at the furniture place. He was like a disco king, like he used to come with like these fancy shirts on to work and these pointed shoes and everything else. And he'd be saying, "I'm going out tonight dancing." And I'm like, man, how does this guy get up and come to work at 8 o'clock in the morning? But he never drank. He could go to a club, stay out till 2 o'clock in the morning, and then he'd come to work. And I'm like, what's wrong with that guy? But he had the right idea. You're supposed to work, you go have fun, and then you come back to work. So, anyway, moving on. I left college, like I said, and what do you do? What do you do now? I quit that job. It was hard work. I don't know if any of you have done it, but it's really hard work. Anybody that does it, I give them a lot of credit, because it is a tough, tough business. And so I decided I was going to move back home. And here I am, 21 years old, and back home living with Mom. And then I went through this period for about 6 or 7 years, from the time I was 21 to the time I was 28, that I was incapable of holding a job. I didn't have a checkbook. I didn't have a car. I didn't have anything. And yet in my mind, I thought that I was just fine. That's where the disease takes you. And it took me very quickly. So by the time I was 28 years old, I'm a full-blown alcoholic. Do anything to get a drink. I mean, I used to have friends. None of us, we'd hang out. It was crazy. We'd scrape together money to get a drink. And when I say scrape together, we'd scrape it together somehow. And that's what we did. So now I kind of just moving along a little bit. I finally got a car. Still didn't have a job. I got the car illegally, but I won't go into that. Because that's a pretty crazy story in itself. But anyway, so now I'm drinking pretty much every day. I don't know about anybody in here, but I drank every day. Like if the day ended in Y, I was drinking. And if it was a holiday, I was going to drink even more. And then it became a real disaster. So at 28, I had gone to New York City with a friend on the train, and we were up all night. Came back home back to New Jersey, and decided that we're going to go play softball. The next morning, up all night, going to play softball. Now, I don't know about the women in here, but when the guys will know, when you go to play softball, the only important thing about playing softball is that there's a keg of beer. That's why you go to play. And so there was plenty of beer there. And I drank all day. And it was a beautiful sunny day, like today. Absolutely beautiful. And I decided it was a good idea to go down to the beach. We call it the shore in New Jersey, but here you call it the beach. And I went down to a bar and started drinking at probably 12 o'clock, 1 o'clock in the afternoon. And had no right being behind the wheel of a car at that point. And then some friends of mine came in who were still dressed up they were in tuxedos. They had been at a wedding and were up all night. So you can imagine, we get together, I get together with them, and I think about it, I go, man, this is pretty crazy. We started drinking shots of Southern Comfort. Now, I don't know about anybody in here. Anybody in here like Southern Comfort? Oh, yeah, a few, yeah, there's a couple in here, I know. Yeah, that's the worst tasting stuff in the world, but we drank a lot of it. And then I got behind the wheel of a car and ended up in an accident. Thank God I didn't hurt anybody else. The car I was driving was a Mustang. I had a name for it. You got to have a name for your car when you're that young. And it was Sally, of course. And I split that car in half, basically. And something happened. God was looking out for me, and I truly believe that. My wife calls them angels, but somebody was looking out for me that night, that day. And a guy came running down the road, and he saw me, and he said, I recognized, I was kind of in a blackout, I was kind of in shock, I don't know what I was, but I was out of it. And he came up and he said, are you all right? You been drinking? What do we say? Hell no. And I went to high school with this guy. And he was a wrestler at the high school that I went to. And I knew him. And he was a cop in that town. And he said, we need to get you out of here. So they did. Long story short, I'm going to move it along a little bit. I went home to where I was living with Mom. And I passed out that day. She happened to not be home. I passed out in my bed in the same clothes that I had in the accident, covered in blood. Passed out, and who comes in to wake me up the next day but my mom? Now this is the person that loves you more than anybody in the world. And she sees me laying in bed with blood all over me, no car in the driveway, and says, what happened? I said, I don't really know. I said, I know I was in an accident and I don't have my car. And she goes, no. Why are you in bed covered in blood? Think about that. Think about that. So at 28 years old, I'm a full-blown alcoholic out of control. Now, I told you that my dad was a chronic alcoholic. He drank every day. And I never thought I'd see that man sober. Never in my wildest dreams did I think he could get sober. He ended up in an alcoholic coma at the age of 54 and survived it and came out of there at Lyons VA Hospital in New Jersey and said, I'll never drink again. And I had heard that many times before. And he jumped into AA. He had been around AA for 30 years and never got sober until that incident. So he almost died. And when they talk about jails, institution, and death, he was on death's door. My mom gets on the phone, calls him. Now they're divorced. Excuse me. They're divorced. Gets on the phone and said, he's yours. You need to take him. And he's like, oh, what's the problem? She goes, I can't control him anymore. So my dad picks me up. Now you got to picture this. I couldn't stand this man when I was younger. I hated the alcoholic. I hated him. I didn't hate my dad. I hated the alcoholic. He comes to pick me up and he says, what's the problem? I said, I don't think there is one. He goes, oh no, there's a problem. You're an alcoholic and you don't like it. And I was stunned. Here he is telling me. He's telling me I'm an alcoholic, and I'm thinking to myself, wait a second here. That's like the pot calling the kettle black. And he said, no, there's a problem. He goes, but I'm going to try and help you out. He had a one-bedroom apartment in Red Bank. And he said, you're going to come live with me. And he goes, you're going to hit 90 meetings in 90 days. I'm thinking, whoa, what did I get myself into here? He said, you're going to sleep on the floor on a mattress and you're going to like it. And I'm thinking, God, what the heck happened to me? How did this happen so fast? How did it happen so fast? It was like from the age of 17 to the age of 28, it was like a blur, because I lived in a blackout all the time. I don't know if anybody in here ever had a blackout. I had them every time I drank. All the time. So now I go to live with him, and he was like old school. He was old school AA, out of the Navy, smoked cigarettes like it was going out of style, and drank coffee till 11 o'clock at night, and then went to bed. I can't have a cup of coffee today and not be up till like 2 in the morning. There you go, Lynn. So anyway, now I'm living with him, and I start going to meetings. The first meeting I went to was in Red Bank, New Jersey. 300 people on a Monday night. 300 people. I used to drink in the bar right across the street. Everybody did. Everybody that I grew up with drank in that bar. And I used to see the guys that used to come in, and I'd say, oh man, that guy's an alcoholic. I'll never be like him. And he's doing a shot and beers at 12 o'clock in the afternoon. Well, I was doing the same damn thing. I just didn't want to admit it. I didn't want to accept the fact that I ended up just like my old man at 28. So I started going to meetings, and believe me when I tell you, I did not go with the same right intentions that I should have. I went there to learn how to drink. I figured the people in AA are going to teach me how to drink, and then I could move on. Now, my dad had been around for 30 years. You would think I might have picked up on something like, oh, no, this is about stopping drinking and just changing about everything in your life. Because I had to change everything. So, needless to say, I went 89 days. Didn't pick up a drink for 89 days. You know what I did on the 90th day? I got drunk. And that went on for about 5 years. I don't know whether I couldn't stop, I wouldn't stop, I didn't want to stop. You know, I don't know what it was. I never accepted the fact that I was a drunk. I never accepted the fact. It's easy for me to say, hey, I'm Mark, I'm an alcoholic. That's easy. I can admit it. But to accept it in your gut and in your heart and in your soul that you're an alcoholic, that's what it takes. You know, they used to talk about the 12 steps all the time. I couldn't get the first one right, never mind get to the rest of them. You know, I had good sponsors. I had great sponsors. And, you know, I just continued to drink. I didn't drink all the time. I had periods of sobriety, you know, where I shouldn't say sobriety. I had periods where I was dry. Sometimes I get 6 months, sometimes I get 9 months, and then I'd go back out. For those of you that are new here, relapse is not a requirement. If you really want to stop drinking, this is the place that works. AA is the place that saves lives. It works if you want to do some work, but it takes work. So I lost my license several times. I went to drunk school several times. I saw all those movies, you know, all that stuff that went on. And I was finally sent to an outpatient rehab in Freehold, New Jersey, called New Hope. New Hope is probably I think it still is probably one of the best rehab facilities that you can go to. And I went to the outpatient one, and it was the guy who was there was the counselor, and I took the test that you take, that you fill out all the questions. I passed with flying colors. He looked at me, and he knew my dad, and I didn't know this. His name was Tony. And he said, you know, Mark, you act like a duck, you think like a duck, chances are you're a duck. Get over it. And I was pissed again. I was pissed. Like, how could he talk to me like that? Who is this guy? But he set me in a program, and me and two other guys, Junior, who could barely speak English, and Dan the gutter man. And we used to go to meetings all the time. Every night we went to a meeting somewhere. And that really started me down on the right path. During this, this time frame, I had started to work for a really good company in the home building business. And I got that job through a friend of mine who I grew up with in high school. And he asked me if I was interested in coming to work for that company. I had never held a real job in my life. And I did. And he was my best friend. And he ended up passing away at the age of 42 from pancreatic cancer. I still think about him today. And he got me that job, and he got me a career. And we used to drink together all the time. But he didn't drink alcoholically. He was one of those people, he could drink and then he could get up and go to work. Whether he's a functionary, I don't know whatever you want to call it. He was one of the greatest guys I ever knew. And so I started down the right path. I got a really good sponsor, started to work the steps, went to a lot of step meetings in New Jersey, and went to a lot of meetings. I think, I don't know, I probably averaged going to 5 meetings a week, sometimes 6, maybe more. I got really involved up there, doing things that I never thought I would do, making coffee, cleaning ashtrays. I didn't even smoke, and I'm cleaning ashtrays. But, that's what I had to do. I had to humble myself. My ego was so big, yet I had an inferiority complex. Like, how does that work? How does that work? Not real well. And so I drank instead, or did other substances to kind of hide all of that. So, moving on, got a sponsor, got a job now. I met my wife, who's still my wife today, at an Al-Anon and AA meeting. Would have never thought that would have happened. That's where I met her, and she's still my wife today. 35 years. That's a long time to live with this man. And I'll tell you what, she was a blessing in my life, still is. And we started to go to a lot of meetings together. I surrounded myself with sober people. I had to change the people, the places, and the things. Because if I continued to do the same things with the same people, I would continue to drink. I have friends that I'm still friends with in New Jersey. They still drink. I don't hang around with them, but we're still friends. We still talk to one another. We still communicate, and I know one thing. They would do anything for me, and I would do anything for them. They can drink. I can't. That's the bottom line. I know if I pick up one drink, I will be drunk. I used to always think it was the 20th drink. I used to always think, it's after drinking a case of beer, then you're drunk. Not for me. I knew once I picked up that first drink, I was off to the races. Off to the races. So, started going to a lot of meetings, had a good sponsor, started to work the steps, going to a lot of step meetings, and life's starting to get good. I'm starting to put some sobriety together. And I'm like, wow, how did this happen? Well, it happened because I had a different outlook on Alcoholics Anonymous. I was willing to give it a chance. Because if I didn't, I would lose everything. I would lose everything. So, I guess there's a common theme here, which was, I had to accept, I said it earlier, I had to accept the fact that I was a drunk. And so I started to surround myself with guys in the program, and we used to do everything. We used to go on commitments all the time, and in New Jersey, when you went on a commitment, there was usually a person that would introduce the speaker, and there was 2 speakers. And so we'd go everywhere, and, it was a lot of fun. I mean, that's where I really got to know these guys. And we used to run together, literally like run, not like, we ran together and played golf together and did everything together to stay sober. And I developed some of the greatest friendships that I have in my life, and people in Alcoholics Anonymous. My sponsor, Kenny, the tall man, he's got 43 years. 43 years without a drink or a drug. And I knew him when he first came around, because I came in just after he did. And I said, man, that guy will never get sober. He's still sober. He's still sober today. I speak today. I just was on the phone Monday with him and another friend from New Jersey. One lives in Florida, one lives in New Jersey, and I live in Pinehurst, North Carolina. And we try and talk once a month. And we talk about sobriety. We talk about God. Believe it or not. We talk about God. And the one guy, Bobby's a very spiritual person. I mean, extremely strong belief in God. And when I hear him speak, it's like, man, he's got something that I'd really like to have. He has a really strong belief in his higher power, who he calls God. But he does a lot of work also. A lot of stuff with the church that he belongs to. And again, he's another guy. I would have said, man, he'll never get sober. He's sober 39 years. So it can be done. It can be done. So, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 years sober, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10 years sober. Things are going great. I've got a great job. I have a home. I have 2 dogs. I have a car, cars, all of that stuff. All of that stuff. Things are going great. The career I started, I ended up working with that company for 26 years. There's a person who never held a job. 26 years. The best thing that ever happened to me. It was a great company. I loved working for them. They gave you opportunities if you worked hard. And that's what I wanted, I loved the challenge. I loved building houses. That's what I did for a living. I loved it. So, 11 years, 12 years, 13 years, 14 years, 15 years. Still sober. Everything's good in my life. 16 years. 17 years. And all of a sudden, something's starting to happen. I'm not hanging around with the guys that I used to hang around with. I'm not playing golf with those guys anymore. I'm not going to as many meetings. I'm certainly not talking to my sponsor. Year 18. Now it's getting where I'm not going at all. I've got this figured out. Yeah, year 18. I got this figured out. Now I don't need to do this. I'm feeling pretty good. Year 19. And I'm on the fence. I call it fence sitting. You know you're an alcoholic. You can't drink. But you're thinking about a drink. And you're not thinking clearly. And you have a choice. The choice is, which side of the fence are you going to jump onto? You're going to go on this side or that side? I forgot about everything that I learned in AA. If you're not surrounding yourself with sober people, and if you're not going to be active in this program, it usually doesn't work the way it can work. Year 20, came down here to Pinehurst, North Carolina, beautiful Pinehurst, North Carolina, and to play golf. And with a friend of mine who was in the home building business as well. He was a trim carpenter, one of the most talented guys I've ever met. And we came down. I had no intentions of drinking. None. And he said, come on, let's go down in town. We'll get a hamburger, get something to eat, and then we'll go back and do whatever. So we go to some local place. I forget, it's called something different now, but he ordered a double shot of Jameson's and a Stella. I didn't even know what a Stella was. I hadn't been around alcohol for so long, I didn't even know what it was. I go, what's a Stella? He said, oh, it's a great taste of beer. It's really good if it's on tap. I'll never forget it. He's telling me all these great things about it. And I said to the girl, I said, do you have it on tap here? She says, oh yeah, we have it on tap. Give me 2. Give me 2. And I thought that he was literally going to jump across the table and choke me. And he said, what do you think you're doing? I said, I know what I'm doing. That was the arrogance had come back. The ego was back in play. All those great things I learned about, I forgot about it. Trust in God, I wasn't trusting in God. Trusting in the program, I wasn't trusting in the program anymore. I had gotten away. If I can tell you one thing, if you're an alcoholic, AA works, but you need to do some work. You need to get a sponsor. You need to go through the steps, and you need to get active. That's the biggest mistake I made when I look back now. You know, I sponsor a lot of guys today. I love it. It keeps me sober. I didn't work with enough guys back then. I hung around with all sober people, but I didn't do enough work. You know, remember I told you I always found the easier, softer way? I guess I did, without even knowing it. I just didn't want to put in the amount of work that it needed to stay sober. So, pick up, and before I picked up those 2 drinks, this is the alcoholic. I said to myself, in my brain, if you pick up these first 2 drinks, you're off to the races. I knew what I was doing. I figured I've been around long enough, I'm okay. Well, the story goes on. And now I'm still working, have this great career, have a wife at home. Things are going okay. I didn't drink the next day. I don't think I drank for the next 2 weeks, 3 weeks. I can't even remember. But then one day I decided it was a good idea. I was going to go out and cut the grass, so I'd get a 6-pack. Nice sunny day, you cut the grass, what do? You get a 6-pack of beer. My wife said, what are you doing? I said, I'm cutting the grass. No, I know that. What are you doing with the 6-pack? Oh, I'm just going to have a couple while I'm cutting the grass. Now, my wife had been in Al-Anon, so she knew exactly what was going on. And so it started with just a 6-pack. And then maybe a couple of weeks later, it was more. And my middle name could have been More. I don't know about anybody else in here other than Steve. My middle name should have been More, because I always wanted more. I don't care what it was. I have an addictive personality. That's who I am. I always want more. So, I'm going to get to what's going right in my life. It took 10 years. 10 years to get back here. I couldn't think. I couldn't remember. I literally could not think. I was in a blackout every day. Every day. I drank until I either passed out, blacked out, both, whatever. You get the point. I woke up in Phoenix, Arizona with my wife, so hungover, I had ingested enough alcohol the day before, could have killed a horse. And I laid in that bed and I prayed to God and said, I need help. I need help. Through those 10 years, and this is what's interesting, this is the insanity of this disease. Through those 10 years, I never prayed to God to ask me to help me to stop, because I knew I wasn't going to stop. I knew I wasn't going to stop. I don't know if any of you have had a hangover before, but I had a hangover so bad I couldn't get out of bed. And I flew home with my wife, and it was the worst plane flight you could ever have. And I got up the next morning and I went to the 7:30 meeting at the Wilder building. And I knew then that I had to change everything about the way that I was living. I had to surround myself in AA 110%. And I probably went to 160 meetings in the first 90 days, not because I had to, because I wanted to. I wanted to stay sober. I was sick and tired of being sick and tired. And a great thing happened just a few days into coming back. I played golf where I live. And I played golf with this man who, he had an oxygen tank. And he wore suspenders playing golf. And I'm thinking, man, I've never seen anybody wear suspenders before. Overalls playing golf with an oxygen tank. And he was a pretty good golfer. And we got talking. And then I think it was a Friday night, who comes walking into that meeting but this man? Now, you talk about God working in mysterious ways. That was God working in mysterious ways in my life. And he turned out to be one of the best blessings I ever had since I've been in this program. He was sober 40-some years, and he just basically said, Mark, you know what you have to do. I'm just going to guide you along. And he goes, you need to do the work, man. And he was probably one of the most spiritual people I ever met. And so he started out as my temporary sponsor and then became my sponsor. He passed away from cancer probably a year and a half into my sobriety. And he was sober. He was getting his 42-year piece up at 7 Lakes. And they had to take the meeting outside. His wife drove him up to that meeting. And people came outside the meeting to give him his chip. And he asked me to give him his chip. I get chills thinking about it. If you don't have a belief in God, if you don't have a belief in a higher power right now, give this program a chance and try and find a higher power. I had to learn the higher power wasn't me. I had to learn the higher power wasn't me. So, I started to get sober. I got another sponsor. And when I first came around this program, and Steve will remember, I was a sick dude. I was sick. And a lot of people in these rooms tonight were here when I first came around. And they showed me that there was a different way to living. And they showed me that if you stayed sober one day at a time, you would get better. I went to a meeting in 1983 in Red Bank, New Jersey. And a gentleman named Lloyd, who was taller than me, probably 6'5", in a suit in Riverview Hospital, where they bring in the nut ward, they bring in the alcoholics from the place where they did, and it was an open meeting, and it was a big meeting. And he said, I'm not going to tell you anything on how to get sober because you're all new, but I will tell you this. If you don't pick up a drink one day at a time, you will get better. He didn't say your wife will get better. He didn't say your life would get better. He didn't say your job would get better. He said you will get better. Trust the process. I never forgot that. I still can picture him in my mind today. And so what's going on today? So Like Blake said, I'm fortunate. I'm retired. I was very lucky in life. I had God looking out for me for a long time and didn't even know it. I probably had a lot of people praying for me. I know my mom sure did. You know, I'm able to be a son today. My mom will be 93 on March 14th. I'm going up with my wife to celebrate her birthday. 93 years on this earth. And I got to tell you, if it wasn't for her, I wouldn't have made it. And I'm extremely grateful for that. I have a great wife. She's seen the good, the bad, the ugly, and now she's seen a sober man again. I sponsor a lot of guys. I do work down at the colony. That's the greatest gift that I've ever gotten. Mark Christopher asked me one day, he said, would you like to come down here once a month and speak to the guys? I said, I'd love to do it. Other than when COVID happened, I haven't missed a month, not 1 month. And I sponsor a lot of guys that come out of the colony, and I've seen them grow. And I've seen some fail. And I sponsored some that failed. And that's okay. I get it. I get it. You know, I have a life today, and if you're new, really give yourself a chance. Trust in God. Trust the process. Work these steps. I mean, work them. Go through the big book. I used to hear that stuff and say, oh, that's nonsense. It's not nonsense. It'll save your life. And I have a life today, and I say this honestly, I have a life beyond my wildest dreams. If you would have told me that I would be standing here tonight, living in Pinehurst, North Carolina, and have the life that I have, I would have never believed it. You know, I grew up in the neighborhood. The neighborhood I grew up with was called Sunken City. That was the nickname the cops gave it. So you can imagine what kind of crew lived there. And today, I'm in a whole different life. I'm 69 years old. I have a belief in a higher power. I love AA. I would have never thought you'd hear that coming from me. You know, I saw what it did for my dad. It saved his life. My dad died 20 years sober. Was dying of lung cancer. Some of you may have heard me say this before. And if you're new, listen to what I'm going to tell you. He called me up from his bed. He was dying of cancer at 2 o'clock in the morning. And I woke up and I'm like, whoa, what's going on? He said, I just wanted to tell you a couple of things. I'm thinking, wow, I guess the morphine's kicked in. And he said, I want to tell you that I made it. And I said, what do you mean you made it? He said, I'm going to die a sober man. I'm going to die a sober man. And then he said, I love you. And I never thought I would hear that from him. And I knew he did, because he put up with my crap when I first came into AA. So, that's enough out of me. Blake, I know you said you got a lot of time. I have a tendency to talk too much, so I hope I brought you a good message tonight. Trust in God, trust the process, and get active. That's how it works. Thanks, guys.